Acting is a brutal gig. You're expected to weep like your dog just died, scream like you've seen a ghost, and deliver lines like they're your own thoughts, all while wearing someone else's pants. Most actors spend decades perfecting this. They train their faces to twist into 1,000 expressions, their voices to boom or break on cue. They're emotional acrobats, flipping from joy to despair faster than you can say Oscar bait. And then there's Michael Cera, who stumbled onto the scene, picked one trick, and said, "Yeah, this'll do." He's the human equivalent of a shrug emoji, and somehow he's made it work. Cera's career isn't a roller coaster of reinvention, it's a flat line of familiarity, and I mean that in the kindest way possible. He's the awkward, floppy-haired guy who looks like he's perpetually 1 second away from muttering, "Sorry, my bad." You've seen him as George Michael Bluth in Arrested Development, bumbling through family dysfunction with the energy of a kid who'd rather be anywhere else. You've seen him in Juno, wooing Ellen Page with the charisma of a damp napkin. You've seen him in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, fighting evil exes while looking like he's unsure if he parked his bike correctly. In every role, he's the same. Soft-spoken, hunched, radiating the vibe of someone who'd apologize to a chair for sitting on it wrong. He's not an actor with range. He's an actor with a brand. And that brand is mildly uncomfortable human. This isn't a dig. Well, maybe a little. But it's mostly admiration for a guy who's turned a single note into a symphony, or at least a really long ringtone. Most actors aim to be chameleons, blending into every role like they're auditioning for a nature documentary. Cera is the opposite. He's a house cat who walks into every scene, looks around, and decides, "Nah, I'm good as is." You don't cast Michael Cera for a wild transformation. You cast him because you need someone who can stand there, blink, and make you feel vaguely sorry for him. It's a superpower, really. A beige, low-wattage superpower. Let's break this down. Imagine Michael Cera in a role that demands range. Picture him as a grizzled war general, chest puffed out, barking orders at a battalion. He'd probably squint into the distance, adjust his helmet, and mumble, guys, could you maybe charge, if you're cool with that?" The troops would hesitate, not out of fear, but because they'd be wondering if he's lost his lines, or just really bad at pep talks. Or how about Cera as a sleek, menacing villain? He'd twirl his mustache, if he could grow one, and say, "I'm going to destroy you," unless that's, inconvenient. He'd trip over his cape, apologize to the henchman, and accidentally set off the self-destruct button while reaching for a snack. It wouldn't be evil, it'd be endearing, which is the problem. He's trapped in a cage of his own awkwardness, and Hollywood keeps tossing him the keys to stay there. Now let's stretch this further. Michael Cera as a Shakespearean king. Picture him in a crown, velvet robe dragging behind him, delivering "to be or not to be" with all the gravitas he can muster. He'd shuffle to center stage, glance at the audience like they caught him cheating on a test, and whisper, "To be or, not to be, I guess. Sorry. I'm not great at decisions." The soliloquy would turn into a therapy session, and Hamlet would end with him politely asking the skull if it's mad at him. It's not that he couldn't memorize the lines, he just couldn't sell the soul-crushing angst. His emotional spectrum runs from mild discomfort to slightly more discomfort with a side of fidgeting. And yet, we keep watching. Why? Because it's Michael Cera, and we've signed an unspoken contract to accept him as is. This lack of range isn't a flaw, it's a feature. Cera's built an entire career on being the human equivalent of a Toyota Corolla. Reliable, unassuming, and not about to win any races. You don't get in a Corolla expecting a Ferrari roar. You get in knowing it'll start, it'll run, and it won't leave you stranded on the side of the road. Cera's the same. He shows up, he mumbles, he nails the guy who's bad at eye contact vibe, and he clocks out. Other actors exhaust themselves chasing versatility, starving for a role, growing a beard, learning an accent just to cry in the rain. Cera doesn't do that. He doesn't need to. He's the anti-method actor, the guy who looks at a script and thinks, "Cool, I can wear my own hoodie for this." Take Superbad, for example. He plays Evan, the quieter half of a horny teen duo, and it's peak Cera. He's nervous, he's sweet, he's trying to talk to girls without sounding like he's reading from a manual. It's not a stretch, it's just him, dialed up to a solid 4 out of 10 on the intensity scale. Compare that to Jonah Hill, his co-star, who's yelling, sweating, and flailing like he's auditioning for a cartoon. Hill's all over the place. Cera's just there. And it works. The contrast makes the movie, but it also highlights how Cera's stillness isn't laziness, it's strategy. He's the straight man in a world of clowns, and he's fine with it. Probably because standing still is less likely to make him trip. Critics might call him one note. They're not wrong. Fans might say that note's perfectly tuned, like a single piano key you can't stop pressing because it's oddly soothing. They're not wrong either. Cera's not out here trying to be Meryl Streep, cycling through accents and eras like a human time machine. He's not Daniel Day-Lewis, disappearing into a role so hard you forget he's a real person. He's Michael Cera, and he's betting you'll take him as he comes. Floppy hair, quiet voice, and all. It's a gamble that's paid off for 2 decades, mostly because he's cheap, punctual, and doesn't demand a trailer with a juice bar. Let's talk longevity. Most actors with no range burn out fast. They're a gimmick, a one-hit wonder, a face you see in a single movie before they vanish into infomercials or reality TV. Cera's different. He's turned his lack of versatility into a renewable resource. He's not sprinting toward an Oscar, he's jogging a marathon in sensible shoes. Look at his filmography. Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, Youth in Revolt, Paper Heart. Same guy, slightly different haircuts. He's not evolving, he's persisting. Like a barnacle on the hull of Hollywood, clinging tight and refusing to let go. You can't hate a barnacle for being a barnacle, it's just doing its thing. And Hollywood loves him for it. Directors don't cast Cera to surprise you, they cast him to ground you. In a world of loud, flashy performances, he's the quiet kid in the back who doesn't raise his hand but still gets an A. He's the palate cleanser between the spicy dishes, the plain rice that keeps the meal from overwhelming you. Need a character who's relatable but not threatening? Call Cera. Need someone who can lose a fight without making it look staged? Cera's your guy. Need a lead who won't outshine the supporting cast? You get the picture. He's the human version of a supporting beam. Nothing fancy, but the whole thing collapses without him. Let's stretch this metaphor further, because I've got words to burn. Imagine actors as a buffet. You've got your bold flavors, your Brad Pitts and Natalie Portmans sizzling with intensity, offering a little bit of everything. You've got your exotic dishes, your Tilda Swintons and Jared Leto's, weird and unpredictable, maybe an acquired taste. Then there's Cera, the plain mashed potatoes. No gravy, no chives, just potatoes. You're not excited about them, but you're not mad they're there. They fill you up, they don't clash with anything, and you'd miss them if they were gone. That's Cera's magic. He's comfort food in a world of Michelin star chaos. Now, could he push himself? Sure, he's flirted with it. In Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus, he's a little edgier, a self-absorbed jerk instead of a lovable dork. In the Lego Batman movie, he voices Robin with a touch more pep. But even then, it's still Cera, just with a slight twist, like adding a pinch of salt to that mashed potato. He's not reinventing the wheel, he's nudging it slightly to the left. And that's fine. We don't need him to be a gourmet chef. We're happy with the guy who brings the reliable side dish. What's fascinating is how he's avoided the traps of typecasting backlash. Usually, when an actor gets stuck in one mode, they either fade away or desperately pivot. Think Macaulay Culkin growing a beard and starting a pizza band. Cera doesn't pivot. He leans in. He's like, you want awkward? I'll give you awkward until I'm 50. And he might. Picture him in 20 years, still playing the nervous guy, just with more wrinkles and a receding hairline. He'll be the dad who's bad at barbecues, the uncle who doesn't know how to use TikTok, the retiree who's scared of his own golf cart. The roles will age, but the Cera-ness won't. It's eternal, like taxes or bad Wi-Fi. So, here's to Michael Cera, the actor who proves range is overrated when you've got consistency in spades. He's not scaling emotional mountains or plumbing the depths of the human psyche. He's just standing there, hands in his pockets, waiting for someone to tell him it's okay to leave the scene. And somehow, that's enough. Or it's not, but who's keeping score? In a Hollywood full of peacocks flashing their feathers, Cera's the sparrow who's cool with being brown. He's not bold, he's not loud, he's not even that memorable some days. But he's here. And he's him. And that's more than most can say. Beige has never looked so brave.